Welcome to the LeaderTreks Youth Ministry Trainingcast with Doug Franklin, where we help youth workers like yourself be intentional. Welcome to the LeaderTreks Youth Ministry Trainingcast. I'm Taryn.
And I'm Doug.
And once again, you're joining us here in the LeaderTreks office.
I don't even know how we got that start. Like, it just kept going.
I think you came up with it.
Oh, boy.
And then
it seems cheesy.
Yes, it is cheesy. I did make the suggestion that we could make it a musical ditty. And, you know, a lot of...
I vote no.
See, I got voted down. But I think you guys will be thankful to be spared. Both of our singing voices were not gifted in that way. But today's a hard day to shoot in the office. You can't see it, but right over there is a stash of candy that our staff left.
And it's not good candy. It's Smarties and like Laffy Taffy, but the Lifesaver mints. I'm on number 6 already.
Those are left over from our refuel retreats. It's a classic that we always have anytime we do a refuel retreat.
Mints are good.
And now you know what happens to them after we're done.
Mm-hmm.
But this is actually the time of year where we find that a lot of youth workers are contemplating moving to a different church. I've been talking to a lot of youth workers on the phone recently, and they've been sharing with me, Doug, that they don't know how they got here. They're at a church. Yeah. They're realizing that it's not a good fit, and they're wondering, how did I get to this place where I'm not at all where I wanted to be?
Because the overriding idea was get a job, right? We want to get a job, and this church looks like a pretty good church, and it has the same beliefs we have, and so I want to go work there. And I think there's a lot of youth workers that are in a job at a church, and it's not a great fit.
Yeah.
But they don't actually know how to find the great fit. And so they're even worried about, okay, maybe I'll start looking. Slingshot is calling me, like they're calling everyone, or all these other places are calling, and I could put my resume up, and the grass is always greener on the other side of the hill. And you know, the truth of the matter is that in youth ministry, the grass is not greener on the other side of the hill, because you have to realize a youth worker just left that job for some reason. So if you're going to transition, think long and hard about what it is that you're looking for. Because you're not just looking for another job, you're looking for the right job, the right position, the right ministry that's a great fit for you. And I think that's important to be able to find.
So the purpose of our training cast today is to give you some advice as if you're in this position looking for a new job, looking for a new ministry role, to help you on that path of discovery, so that when you do take a job, you know what you're getting into, and there are fewer surprises along the way. So Doug, give us a little bit of your take on this. How do you go about this discovery process? What do you got to find out?
Number one thing you got to discover at a church is, what is the work environment?
Okay.
This is huge. This has to do with, do they allow you to spend some of your work hours at ball games and concerts and plays? Do they expect you to be at your desk? What do they expect you to wear? How do they do communication inside of the church? How much time are you going to get with some senior leadership? Who are the critical others in the church, and how do they affect the church? We all know churches where one or two people are forcing everybody to do certain things at a church, you know? I talk to youth pastors on the phone that are like, they don't let me use credit cards here. Or they only pay with a check, and the person who writes the check only works once a month. Or we have an executive pastor, and I only get to see the senior pastor one time a year at a lunch, and some years he misses. You know, I mean, every work environment is different, but your work environment has a lot to say about your success and, this is a key one, your enjoyment of the ministry. And so you're looking for a certain kind of work environment. So before you think transition, start thinking this: what am I looking for work environment wise? What kind of communication do I want to have with my bosses? What kind of communication do I want to have about budgeting? How does money work in the church? How do we actually do staff meeting, and what takes place in staff meeting? And here's the big one. A lot of youth workers want to collaborate with a team, but a lot of churches use the old-fashioned teamwork. Like there is a pitcher, there's a first baseman, there is a second baseman, and you play right field as the youth worker.
Yep.
So you got to be really careful. What is the environment? And if you want collaborative, then you got to ask a lot of questions, because there are very few churches that use collaborative, where everybody shares ideas and everybody's ideas are equally valued, all that kind of thing. So you got to really think about this work environment piece. What are you looking for? And those should be some of your first questions in the discovery phase of thinking about transitioning.
And I think part of that too, a lot of churches are moving to this hybrid role for the youth worker, that they're also overseeing next gen, or they're also overseeing children's ministry, or maybe they have a role with the tech team, or the role as a worship leader, and figuring out what's the balance that's going to be expected here of how do I do those things.
And then a really great question is, if I do really well at youth ministry, will I get automatically more added to my plate? Because this is the biggest mistake churches make. You do something well, let's give you more to do, right? So you got to really ask these questions to find out, because here's the thing that I've learned over the years. You will never get fired for what's on your resume, for doing what's on your resume. You always get fired for what's unexpected, that's not on the resume, that's the unspoken.
Right.
And that's what you really got to discover about the work environment, because they're going to write a fancy job description that somebody helped them write, and that doesn't tell the story. You got to look beyond that.
Sure. So work environment, that's got to be a part of our discovery process. What's the next thing that we should look at?
Relationship with leadership.
Okay.
This is a really important one. I talk to a lot of youth workers, especially younger youth workers, that say, when I got to my first job or my second job, I thought the senior pastor was going to mentor me, kind of like my college professors did, or like my youth pastor did. I thought somebody was going to be there to mentor me. Well, when we talk to senior pastors and we ask them about their relationship with their youth pastor, this is what they say 9 out of 10 times. I hired them to do a job, do your job. That's very different than what most youth pastors think about the relationship on their staff. Now, right now, if you're like, I got a different relationship than that, then high five your senior pastor, give them a hug, take them out to lunch. That's awesome, because that's really great. But there are a ton of youth workers that we talk to on a regular basis that have very little relationship with their senior pastor or even their executive pastor, depending on how their church is organized. So get a really good understanding of who you're reporting to. What's that relationship going to be like? How much time are they going to spend with you? How much are they going to help you with continuing education, with mentorship, with growing in leadership? These are really essential questions, because most churches are hiring you to do a job, period. And if you want mentoring, you're going to have to go out and find it. Yep.
No, there's very rarely an expectation that development is going to take place and be a part of your
But most
your
youth
job.
Most youth workers, I think, want it.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
So it's a really interesting situation.
Now, Doug, the third one that we're moving into here is probably on the list the most uncomfortable of things to discover.
Yeah, money, money, money. We need to talk money, and you need to have an expectation of what you need. Just working with a youth pastor who's in a situation where they took a job about $10,000 less than what they were making last time, but it was a really good church, and they thought it'd be a great situation. And it's been an okay situation. It's been good. But guess what? The $10,000 is becoming a real burden for the spouse.
Yeah.
And that burden on the spouse is growing, and the frustration is growing. And that $10,000, which didn't seem like a big deal to get to the right church, now seems like a really big deal. And I think that's a situation that really causes frictions in marriages, causes frictions at home. And when things at home aren't good, things at ministry aren't going to be good. Also, too, is I talk to a lot of youth pastors that are way underpaid because they never said, I need more money. Listen, you need to develop a way to be able to talk about money. So if you're looking at a job and they're offering $15,000, $20,000 less than you think, you tell them, I need this money. This is why I need this money. I want to save for retirement. I want to be able to pay my bills. I want to be able to put a little money away every month. I want to be able to do some things socially with my spouse or with other people or friends. I want to have a life outside of church. There's nothing wrong with asking for this. Listen, if you really want to understand how churches work, they work on tithing. And tithing is mostly done by 35 to 55-year-olds, who, by the way, are the very parents that have students in youth ministry.
Very true.
Youth pastors, I believe, are some of the best people to help the church continuing to grow in its financial base. So remember, you're not the low man on the totem pole. Remember, you're not the last person that should get the money. And if you're a woman in youth ministry, you should not be paid less. You should be paid equally. And that's something that I think you need to fight for and be vocal about and talk about. Sadly, I have met a number of youth pastors that are on food stamps. When I do this, my heart breaks. I think that there's people in the church that if they knew this, they would be furious. And I think that if you're in a situation where you're grossly underpaid, start talking about it. And if they're not willing to pay you what is a living wage, then you need to understand that may not be the church for you. This isn't a really important one. I think you got to really think about this. And
if you want some of these tips, there's a blog on our website. You can find it. It's called How to Get Paid What You're Worth as a Youth Worker. This is something that's really close to our hearts, and we want to see this wrong righted in youth ministries.
Yeah, big one. Especially for, we work with about 50% of the youth workers we work with are female. And I'm really concerned about this issue that, churches, they're going to fudge on this. And so I just want to make sure that we're really supporting those of you that are in ministry and that you're paid equally. I just think it's really important.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So far we've talked about work environment. We've talked about your relationship with church leadership, and we've talked about money. Doug, what's this last element of discovery?
You got to really be careful of the past because every church hires the opposite of what they used to have.
Yes.
And every student wants what they just lost. So the church is going to be like, the youth pastor before, he or she did this or that, and we want someone who does it totally differently. That's what church is, that's what business is, that's what everybody does. They hire the opposite of what they had or what they didn't like of the last person. But students are in the ministry going, I like the last person because they did this with me. That's how they attracted me to come. So we have to be really careful of this and ask a lot of questions. Who was the past youth worker? What was their experience? How did they handle things? What was done? Were they loved immensely? Were they were they not loved? What was the reason? Find out about the past. The past says a lot about the future. And you really need to know the past in order to navigate some obstacles. I'm not saying don't take that job. I'm just saying you got to really beware of what's happening there. So, the old additive, don't follow that 20-year vet that was amazing. Well, following some 20-year vets that are amazing would actually be a really amazing job, actually. But figuring that out, what they did to be successful and working with them, even to transition, I think that can be really important. It can be a really good situation, but really understand the past. The past says everything about their expectations moving forward. Get to know it.
Oh, it does. And I think in closing out this training cast, it's really appropriate to say that prayer needs to be guiding your process. I think as much as we want youth workers to be in the right role, it also saddens us that the average tenure of youth workers is so low. So we don't mean to communicate that you should jump at any opportunity that presents itself without the clear leading from the Lord to say now it's time to go.
Yeah, that's for sure, because the grass is not always greener on the other side of the hill. And also, too, is dealing with some of the issues that you have at your church right now that might be work environment, that might be money, that might be the past. You could really grow your leadership by confronting some of those things and dealing with them with empathy and care for the people around you. I mean, you might say to yourself, okay, you know what, I'm going to stay, but I'm going to deal with some of these things head on. It will grow your ministry. It will grow you. It'll grow your dependency on God. And I hope that it will really grow your prayer life as well, too. So don't always be quick to jump, because difficult things can actually help you grow in some positive ways as well, too.
And if that's something you'd like to consider more about, take a look at Youth Ministry Reset. It's a coaching tool on our website, and you actually get set up with one of us, and we'll coach you through making some of those changes, making some of those adjustments, confronting your reality. We'd love to help with that.
Love to, yep.
We'll see you next time on the LeaderTreks. Oh,
I was going to say we're going to eat more candy right after
yeah.
this, but...
Well, I didn't want them to know that. But yes, we'll see you next time on the LeaderTreks Youth Ministry Trainingcast.
We will see you soon. Thanks.